good? All right, so first and foremost, I would like to say thank you to all of you all for being here on tonight. Although, yes, I have to give my credit to the people who invited me and all of that, but what's most important is the people that decided to stay, because you all showed up for a reason. And I don't know what that reason may have been, but I hope that it turns out to be worth it, if that makes any sense. So my name again is Dee Dee Watters. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I also want to make sure that I say thank you to the people that are here of service. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, thank you to all of you all that are here and doing something on tonight. It's a beautiful thing, and it's even more beautiful because I ain't got to do none of it. So let's just put that out there in that way. On tonight, I'm going to be the keynote, but I'm not going to talk from a place of giving a speech. I think that it's one of those opportunities that I get to do what I love to do, and that is storytelling, as well as some spoken word that's going to take place. I wanted to do this because I haven't had a chance to do it in a while. So I feel like I get to do what I wanted to do, and since I was brought here, that's what I'm going to do, if that makes any sense. And if anyone has a problem with it, you can talk to me afterwards. It ain't going to change what I'm going to do right now, though. I also want to make sure that we're very mindful in what it is that we're doing when we talk about Transgender Day of Remembrance. So far, so often, we get into this place of where we think about nothing but the sad part, nothing but the sorrows, nothing but the things that bring us down, right? We think about the murders. We think about the way that the murders took place. We think about the individuals who were murdered. And sometimes we have to sit with that. But on tonight, I'm going to invite you to sit with that. And I'm also going to invite you to open your eyes into new thoughts. Is that cool? All right. So, I say this all the time, I won't be before you all long, but that may not be true. So in this, I'm going to lift this up just a little bit. So there was this older trans woman. And older black trans woman, beautiful black trans woman, just beautiful in her senses and everything about her. And as she was going through her journey, there were so many things that were totally different. Like you could go to jail just for wearing women's clothing or the opposite gender clothing. You can have all of these hatred things that can be just thrown and flung in front of you. And she endured and she pushed through. You know, a lot of times we talk about people like Martin Luther King, and we talk about people like Malcolm X or Rosa Parks. But see, people like this young lady sometimes get overlooked. But see, there's this new reality that she wound up getting at some point. You see, there was this event that was going on, and she decided that she was going to go to the event because some of the younger girls had invited her. They told her it was this thing that was called Transgender Day of Remembrance. She didn't really understand. She remembered hearing about TDOR at some point when someone got murdered, but then she never would show up because she always felt like it would be a downer. It would be so heavy. It would just be too much. It would remind her of the days when she would run. You see, it's so interesting because for her, she would know and understand what it felt like to be black. She would know what it felt like to have that black target that would be on your back specifically for being black. She understood what it was like to be black and be femme and the things that came with that. But being black, being a black woman, and then that part of trans experience is the thing that was getting to her. See, all of the hatred that would come to her, she would look at it and she would try to understand and make people understand also. You know, yes, a black man got shot by the police, but then she looks at the reality that her as a black trans woman could be shot by a black man. You see, a lot of times people don't understand that whenever we talk about the murders, she used to want to make sure that people understood and knew that these men are running around here talking about somebody trying to fool them. These men are saying that they panicked at the last minute when they panicked because they knew what was coming, what was forthcoming. Far too often, it seems like we forget that black trans men and black men of trans experience are also fall on the list. We forget about the targets that are there and that are always unspoken, but they're totally, totally present. You see, when she thought about Transgender Day of Remembrance, she thought about it from a place of just sitting there and mourning, having to listen to these names that sound oh so familiar. Names like hearing someone say diamond and knowing that there are so many diamonds. Hearing them say names like Ashley or Amber, and there are so many Ashleys and Ambers. Hearing them say names like Kevin or Kenneth. Hearing them talk about people that had a similar experience. People that looked like her. You see, her understanding of Transgender Day of Remembrance was nothing but a lot of mourning, a lot of sorrow, and a lot of sadness. And she sit with that. But see, when the young girls invited her to come out and go, she said, you know what, I'll go. I'll see what y'all talking about. I'm going to go, I'll go. And as she walked into the building, she was caught off guard. She seen so many beautiful faces, people that looked like her, people that had similar experiences to her, were able to sit there and touch them. And as she touched them, she felt like she gained something just from seeing their beautiful faces, being able to touch them and embrace them in person. Being able to say things to them and know that as she said them, she can see it be received in their eyes. She could see their cheekbones get a little bit bigger and brighten up just because of being there and being present. She was sitting there, and as she was sitting there, she was just admiring. She seen kids that said that they were different. She seen kids that came up to her and said, I'm not worried about no gender. My mama told me I could be what I want to be for now. And it made sense. She was then caught off guard as a young lady. As a young lady, her name was called, and she was called to the stage to go ahead and read her piece. Hello, everyone, and thank you so very much for being here. I'm going to be reading a piece on today, and the piece that I'll be reading is called Say Her Name. As I read this piece to you all, I have to be mindful that when we do this to say her name, I'm reading this on the behalf and from the perspective of me. I'm looking at it because at the end of the day, when we say something like say her name, I have to be mindful that one day they could say my name. And what does that look like? What does that sound like? But I have to be mindful that we can also one day have to say his name or say their name. We have to be mindful of these things. And in writing this, I had to continue to think about myself. So you may not hear me say his name or say their name, but understand that their names are very important, but I'm going to say her name. She was described on the news as a black man in a dress, found dead on the scene, beaten and murdered in broad daylight, but her case went unrecognized. It was another murder of a black trans woman that went unseen. You see, they have a person of interest in custody who's poking his chest out, acting all hard, saying that he didn't know that she was trans. And he's going to be using the defense of the trans panic defense. Society is falling for it and saying things like the trans woman didn't tell that boy, but only if they saw those text messages, those missed phone calls or those voicemails or even the video of him using that toy. You see, they would understand that this had nothing to do with whether or not she was born a girl or a boy. You see, it's so interesting. It's so interesting how when a black trans woman is murdered, people say things like, She should have just told him what she was. She should have just told him what she was. Even if she was just trying to have a little bit of fun, she should have told him what she was. But see, there's this issue that's there, because when it's a black man that's killed by the police, there's an uproar. There's an uproar. Even if the black man had a gun, it doesn't make it right. But to dismiss me in my life, or her in her life, it makes it wrong. You see, we come from a culture that says that we come together and it makes us strong. But the more that we're pulled apart, the weaker we become. You see, I say her name because it's so important that we remember her too. We remember that she belonged to someone. We remember that she was loved by someone. We remember that someone took the time to carry her, to bring her to this place that for some of us we call home. You see, we have to say her name because her story, her life is now gone. You see, I have no need in twisting the facts. I have no need in blaming the victim, which is what so many people do. They blame the person who can't even speak up for themselves. You see, you're making it easier for you to judge and go with hate. But see, what they don't know is that when this individual's life was taken, they took someone who was oh so great. You see, we have people that come around and they have cures for things. And who's to say that the person whose name, that one of the names whose names will be called and read off of a list, was not one that could have been the one who brought the cure to cancer, and then it would exist. You see, it's a horrible shame that she fell victim to a hate-filled murder and endured so much pain. But you see, we come together on this day of remembrance. We come together because we say that you too shall fly high, sis. And although we can't hear your voice anymore, we can't see your presence anymore, guess what? As long as we have breath, we will say her name. As she sit there in the audience, taking it all in, there was so many emotions that came from it. Because as she heard the things that were said, she thought to herself, wow. Hearing names that sound oh so familiar came to mind again. But see, now hearing those names that sounded oh so familiar, they just came in just a little bit differently. You see, after she left, she decided that she wanted to talk to more people. And upon talking to more people and getting involved in community, she wanted to change the narrative. So the following year, she did her own TDOR. And in doing her TDOR, she wanted to make sure that she held space to honor those who were murdered, because their lives were taken away from them. You see, she wanted to make sure that she held space for those who were murdered, but she then took it a step farther. She had to be reminded that when people are murdered, it's just like a garden, she said. She said that sometimes you have to pull some of the weeds out, and sometimes you have to go in there when you plant vegetables, you have to harvest them. You have to go and you got to use them and pull them up and do what they're intentionally for. She said that on TDOR, she wanted to do something just a little bit different. She wanted the remembrance part to look a little bit different, and she wanted it to go with the remembrance, but to also remember. So see, being a person of trans experience in this right now moment, the second that you step foot out of your doorstep, when you cross the threshold, you committed a revolutionary act. Just existing in your true and whole self, you have done something that people will go to glory and will never do. She wanted us to be reminded that when in that garden that seed is planted, that sometimes those weeds or those plants that didn't get to stay, that got tossed away, could be reminded that someone, some way will nourish the seed, will pour a little water, will trim the leaves back so that the sun can still beam and shine on the seed. She wanted to make sure that not only were the individuals who were murdered remembered, but she wanted to make sure that the people that looked like those folks remembered how powerful and amazing that they were and are. You see, at that moment, she started to do things differently. She encouraged people to show up differently. She sent out a charge to tell allies that, allies, we appreciate you. Allies, you know what? We appreciate the fact that you're willing to make a phone call and to send an email and to send a coin when it's needed. But she also reminded them that, you know what, at some point, being an ally just ain't good enough. She said sometimes when it's time to go to war, it's great to have the nurses that are there that can be the allies that will help to treat us. But what about the people that are getting in arms and being armed with us? She called on the charge for people to just take another step. What did that look like? She said, for those of you that are willing to, instead of just send an email, but to show up at City Hall with us, that's one way. She said, for those that are willing to send an email or to stand up and say something out loud whenever we're at the clinic, that's one way. But the other way is to stand up and say, you know what, that's not right. And instead of doing it behind closed doors, do it in front of us. Allow us to see you stand up for us. She allowed people to know that, you know what, if you say that you walk with me and you talk with me, then do something that shows me that you're in love with me and that our love is the same. So when I'm fighting for my rights, I'm also fighting for yours. And when you're fighting for your rights, it should include mine too. You see, she went to this rally, and it was a Black Lives Matter rally. And while she was there, she stood out. And they said, Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. And then she decided that she wanted to switch it up a little bit. And so she then said, Black Trans Lives Matter. And then the person that was standing to the right of her said, Black Trans Lives Matter. And then the person that was to the left of her said, Black Trans Lives Matter. And it was echoing all around. You see, the reason of this story is for us to be reminded that just like that elder who had seen all of this stuff that came before her, she lived and she thrived. And she didn't thrive just because she had all the things that she wanted and needed. She was able to thrive because she seen all the things that she wanted and needed. She wanted to see people that would be able to look like her and live a life that was different than what she had to live. She wanted to be able to see people be able to walk down the street and exist without having to go to jail just because of the clothing in which they had on. She wanted to be able to see people go and utilize the facilities, the restrooms, just the way that they present, and she was able to see a lot of those things. You see, she wasn't able to transition or walk into her journey as a kid, but to see kids doing it was everything. So see, when she showed up to that Transgender Day of Remembrance, what she will remember and what she took away from it was the fact of seeing people that looked like her. Seeing people that were doing things that she wished that she could have done. Doing things that she wished that she could have done that she never would have been able to do. You see, it's one thing to hear someone read a name of someone who was murdered. It's a whole nother thing to be able to see someone who was planted. And when I say that, to see a kid, it's like that seed that is planted in the ground that will grow. It will grow into a tree that will develop shade that neither one of us will ever be able to sit under, but to know that that tree will grow is the most important thing. And so that is the reason why that story was so important. Because as an elder, she never knew that she would see those things. She never thought that that day would come. But see, now in this right now moment, she's able to still look out and see people that look just like her. See people that have a very similar experience. And to know that it gets a little bit better. You see, this is why we're here. We're here to honor the people who have been taken away from us. But at the same token, we're supposed to step back and honor the people who have been gifted to us. We have people that come each and every day into the understanding of their journey. And with something that is so powerful, for many of us, as we went from children to teenagers, it just hit different. When we went from teenagers to adults, it just hit different. Hell, I didn't even know that you can go from an adult to a grown-up. I just realized that, and it hit different, okay? Do you hear me? So understanding that in this moment, yes, we mourn the loss of those whose lives were taken. But it's also another reminder for us to be able to celebrate the lives that were gifted. What does that mean? My life was gifted. I'm able to walk and live in my truth authentically and wholly as who I be. And for each and every trans person, a gender diverse person who is able to do the same is living in something that people may not ever be able to experience. You are wonderfully made. Ha! You should be celebrated each and every day. How about, let me tell you something, when you put your feet in your shoes celebrate. Do you hear me? And the reason being is because they get to touch something that is also important to you. We must be reminded that as lives are taken, it is our call to action to be able to not only remember those who have been murdered, but to remember those who have been present, who have come forth, and to celebrate them in a way that you feel that is great. Because guess what? Something so easy as asking someone their pronouns or providing your pronouns to them can be a way for them to feel that they have been seen. A person asked me one time, how do you let people know that you see them? Because I look at them and I acknowledge them, okay? That's how. And it's something so simple. When I go up to people, a lot of times I introduce myself and give my pronouns. And I give my pronouns because it's a privilege for them to know how to address me, how to respect me. And it also opens a door that says, I invite you to allow me the privilege and the opportunity to respect you, to know you. We talk about politics. And it was so interesting to hear someone come up and speak from a place of politics. When we talk about politics, there's so much power that is there. You see, I ain't here to tell y'all to get out and vote. That's not my thing. I encourage you to, but guess what? That ain't for me. But what I will tell you is that they have this thing that's called the trans panic defense. And if it's not banned in this state, that's one of the places that we can start. So I inform you of what this is. Actually, you can actually go and Google it and find out more about it yourselves. Because see, whenever we say that we want to do better, that means that we don't have to ask people to explain things to us that we can find on Google. I hope that on today, that the story that I gave to you all made sense. I hope that hearing the piece of say her name will remind you all the reasons of why it's important to say her name. You see, even in that piece, it leaves out certain things. We have to say her name because sometimes that's the last time and the only time that her name will actually be said. See, we have to say his name because sometimes we have to remind people that things happen to him too. You see, sometimes we have to say their names because we have to be mindful that not everybody is using the same pronouns or is forced into the same gender identity. So we will say her name. We must say his name. And at the end of the day, we have to be reminded that it too could be our names. So therefore, we say his name, we say her name, we say their names, and being mindful that it also could be our names. Again, my name is Dee Dee Watters, and I appreciate you all. Thank you for having me.
Take a moment to breathe. Stop thinking about all the possibilities. Take a moment to think for yourself. Safe spaces are coming for you. 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 Safe spaces are coming for you.